Hi guys, welcome back to my channel. Welcome if you're new here. My name is Layla. It has become a tradition ever since I think 2020. I share with you my books of the year, all the books I have read that year. Last year I think I read over 30 and I put a goal of reading 40 this year, but not this year, already past year, 2025. But unfortunately I haven't read 40 books. I have only read 30 last year, and that is due to my master's and putting a lot of effort into finishing my master's program and writing my thesis, 20,000 words in like 8 months. That was not a joke. It was a lot of pressure, and therefore honestly my reading wasn't as intense as it could have been. But that's why I'm taking the goal of reading 40 and actually 45 books into 2026. So we'll see how that will go. But in this video, I'm gonna rank all 30 books that I have read in 2025. And we'll start with 2 stars because I didn't give 1 star to any books this year. So let's start with 2 stars. Okay, so I have 4 books in this category, and we'll start with my most recent finished book, and that is I Want to Die But I Want to Eat Tteokbokki by Baek Se-hee. I hope I'm pronouncing her name right. I've been wanting to read this book for quite some time because honestly the title is quite interesting, but then also mental health issues is something I'm not a stranger to, and I always talk about it because I think we need to be aware of these things and we shouldn't be ashamed. And therefore I'm always interested in reading about it as well. But the reason why I reached out for it this time was because the end of the year was quite difficult for my mental health and I really was struggling. So the title really spoke to me. And then also, unfortunately, the author passed away, I think just a month ago or so, and that was very sad. And both of those things combined kind of made me want to read this book. And yet unfortunately I only gave it 2 stars because I did not expect it to be what it was. So I thought, based on the title of the book and the fact that it says conversation with my psychiatrist, I really thought it would be more like maybe you should talk to someone. I think the author is Lori Gottlieb. That's a psychotherapist, and it's basically her diary of working with her patients. I really loved that book. I was crying, I was laughing. I felt like I was part of, you know, these people's lives and stories. And I kind of expected the same, but from the patient's perspective. From this book, unfortunately, that was not the case at all. The book starts off really great with her, you know, introduction to the book, and I kind of expected that that's how it's gonna go, but then it just goes on being like pages of just transcripts of her conversations with her psychiatrist, because she was recording her sessions and then she decided to turn it into a book. I kind of relate to some things she was struggling with, you know, and trying to find herself. But I really question the psychiatrist here because, like, even from my experience as a patient going to a psychiatrist, therapist, many therapists, you know, and trying to find the one that works for me, I feel like this psychiatrist wasn't really doing a good job, and I saw a lot of similar criticism online. And I really wish she could have found a different psychiatrist. Next book is Yoko Ogawa's The Memory Police. It was one of the most recent reads. It took me a while to get through it. I actually had it on my TBR for a few years now, and I loved the cover and it really sounded interesting. So in this book, the narrator is taking us through her daily life in this dystopian reality where things just disappear. It can be a tree, it can be a rose, it can be a bird, or just birds, you know, and then all of a sudden those things are no longer to be found and people just forget they ever existed. But then there are those people who cannot forget, and they are being taken by the memory police, and the memory police is this sort of Gestapo that just comes and checks people's houses. If they suspect that you still hold on to those things that are no longer existing, in this dystopian reality. And I just really felt like this was such a great plot and it was gonna go somewhere. And unfortunately, it just didn't go anywhere. And I think it's just personal preference. And for me, I really wanted there to be some sort of revolution. I wanted people to do something, but nothing was really happening. And throughout the novel, I felt like, well, now she's gonna do something. Now something's gonna happen. And that never came. So at the end, I was just quite disappointed with the ending. I understand why it was the way that it was, but it's just personal preference and I didn't really like that. Next book was another Korean book. This one is Welcome to the Hyunam-dong Bookshop. Not to say that the previous one was Korean. The previous one was Japanese, but the one before that was Korean. So this was a present from my friend for my birthday. She enjoys these type of like comfort books, you know, the Korean, Japanese, cafe stories. I love the book cover and I thought I would love it too, but I think for me, by the way, the author is Hwang Bo-room. Yet again, I apologize if I'm butchering these names because I actually don't know how to pronounce them. But I really didn't enjoy this book. At first I did, but then it felt too, like it's not going anywhere. It felt like there's no plot, there's no twists, there's just, I don't know, a bunch of words put on the paper. Yes, there's cute moments. Yes, I understand that it's about people overworking and people, so many people today I feel like have this idea and this dream of opening your own cafe, and it's a bookshop as well, and it's all cute and cozy and so nice. But to me, it was just too boring. To me, it just wasn't something I actually wanted to finish, but because I'm unable to DNF books, that's just my quality in life. I had to finish it and it was very painful. Like I think first quarter of the book, I was enjoying it and I was looking forward to something actually happening, but then nothing happened. And I was like, okay, so that's it. So like we're just, you know, gonna follow this woman who quits her job, gets a divorce, opens her bookshop, not caring about profit or anything like that. Just simply for the joy. And that's it. And there's like other people who come and go and that's it. You know, there's no time traveling, there's no major love story, nothing. So to me, it was quite boring. Last 2-star book is Richard Osman's The Man Who Died Twice. This one is the second in the series of the Thursday Murder Club. So I've read the first one, I think, a year before, and then I read the second one a year later. Sometimes I'm quite in the mood to read simple books with, you know, plots that are just fun and cozy. And I truly enjoyed reading this one as well. It was like, you know, like a palate cleanser, just something to not feel, not think, and just enjoy life a bit, because, you know, I was writing my thesis and I was quite locked in, and it was a lot of like emotional stuff that I was researching and analyzing, and therefore I really needed comfort reads that would be just easygoing, nothing major is happening. And the reason why I gave it 2 stars is because this is not the type of book I would recommend people and be like, oh my god, everyone should read it. It's just the type of book to, you know, to read and forget about it. And it's fine to have those books, but they're not necessarily above 2 stars reads. Basically, the plot of this book, I actually forgot because it's just old people in the retirement home solving murder, and that's all I remember, and that's why it only has 2 stars, and I don't even know what happened. Oh right, so Elizabeth, who is the leader of this gang of old people solving murders, receives a letter from her old colleague, but also like she thought that person died, but then the person again dies, and so did he die or did he not die? It was fun. Next is 3-star rated books, and let me tell you, I haven't even realized it until I sat down to actually compile a list of all the books I've read this year, I only have one book that I gave 3 stars. Even though now looking through books that I gave 4 stars and some of the 2-star reads, I'm like, maybe it's more of a 3, but then I don't wanna do this. I don't wanna go back to my ratings that I gave right when I was done with the book. I don't wanna change them because I think there was a reason why I gave the rating that I did, and I need to respect that. And so we only have one book, and that is Charles Dickens and his Christmas Carol. A Christmas Carol, I mean, I've never read it, you know, and I feel like people always bring it up during this time. It's one of those classics that you need to read. And of course I could have just watched a movie, and I actually think I did watch a movie when I was a kid, but maybe no. Actually, I don't know, but I now understand references to Scrooge, to Ghost of the Past, Present, and the Future. I get it now. I get it all. And when people are like, oh yeah, you know, Charles Dickens, Christmas Carol, I'm like, oh yeah, I know. So why I gave it 3 stars is because it is a very cozy read, and it's exactly what you need to read for Christmas. I see where he was going, you know, critique of capitalism and people not caring about other people and only caring about money, and how that is not the way to live. But to me, it was a bit boring, and maybe because I'm a bit old to read this book, but I just really genuinely wanted to read this book for Christmas season. And so I just read it like about 2 weeks ago, just for Christmas. Finished it right on time to add it to this book review as well. Do I even need to tell you the plot? So basically, this old man loves money so much, and he does not care about Christmas. He makes fun of it. He calls it a humbug. He calls everything a humbug. Very popular word throughout the novel. And his name is Scrooge. He has a nephew, and he's being invited for Christmas dinner. He refuses to go, and that's when he is being visited by ghosts. And what happens then? You may find out if you read the book or if you watch any of 100 movies, honestly, that were filmed based on the book, or cartoons. There's like all sorts of them. And next is my 4-star reads. Just let me show you how many we got. I think it's the most, the biggest pile of books that I've read in 2025. Majority of them apparently were 4-star reads. And let's see which ones we've got here. So the first book is Joan Didion's The White Album. I have never thought that there will be a book by Joan Didion that would not be a 5-star read from me. I think this is my 5th Joan Didion and very first 4-star read. I am obsessed with Joan Didion. She's my icon. She inspires me. Whenever I feel stuck in my writing, I always reach out for her books. I always get inspiration from her. I love her. There is nothing that can change that. I love, love, love Joan Didion. But this book, I hate it. For some reason, it just wasn't interesting to me. The topics she covered in this collection just wasn't something I was interested in. I truly loved the beginning, and I felt like we were going somewhere, and that was the White Album actually itself. When she buys dresses with Charles Manson's girls, and when she visits the Black Panthers in prison. There were a lot of great moments, but overall I feel like it's too far away time-wise where I cannot relate to, I think it's the 70s. Now my memory is actually betraying me. But still, like honestly, when I say this is the woman whose grocery list I would read from cover to cover, like I mean it. But for some reason the White Album just wasn't it. It was something between 3 and 4. I wasn't inspired by it as much, and it was my least favorite Joan Didion, which is so weird because it's always highly ranked among her books, and my favorite still remains to be The Year of Magical Thinking, and I really enjoyed Blue Nights, and I also love Slouching Towards Bethlehem. And let me tell you what I mean. So basically every book I've read by her but the White Album. Sorry. Next is Susan Sontag and her Regarding the Pain of Others. This one I actually was reading for my thesis, and I kind of made a mistake of not including it more in my thesis. I only included it in the outro, and then I kind of received the comment like, why did you bring it up only in the end? And I'm like, fair. Actually should have done better. But I think this book was really, in a way, philosophical. And this was my first Sontag. So I'm definitely looking forward to reading more of her works. I actually don't remember why I gave it 4 stars. Maybe it's just because it wasn't exactly what I was looking for my thesis, so maybe that's why I was kind of like 4-star. But it's also not the type of book that it was just like life-changing for me, but very interesting critique of why we are interested in watching people suffering, like, you know, media showing us people being bombed and like suffering and all of that, and how images of suffering create both apathy and pity, and just in general the nature of war. So a brilliant essay, but only 4 stars for me. So since we started talking about media, let me bring up Noam Chomsky's Media Control. So I haven't learned anything new from this book, but that's because I did my bachelor's in journalism and communications and my master's in communication studies. So all of it I knew already, but I think if you are someone who is not well aware of the media control and manufacturing consent and how free media is not actually quite free, I highly recommend this book. I still think it's a good read. It's just because I literally spent my life studying and dedicating my time to learning more about this subject. Of course, to me, it was very basic knowledge, but I think otherwise it's a great read. And I think considering what is happening in the US right now, it's also a very great read. Let me just read a quote from the book. Like, I don't know which one I should choose. That's the danger of democracy. If organizations can develop, if people are no longer just glued to the tube, you may have all these funny thoughts arising in their heads like sickly inhibitions against the use of military force. That has to be overcome, but it hasn't been overcome. I'm telling you, very relatable to what's happening right now. And I think pretty much last non-fiction in this list of 4-star reads, so that is Hisham Matar and The Return. And let me show you what I have here. He signed my book. Yes, I saw Hisham Matar in 2025. He came to Brussels to promote his other book, My Friends. I also have that copy signed by him as well. And it was honestly the highlight of my 2025 because he was the most genuine and down-to-earth author I've met. And honestly, he actually chatted with us. There weren't that many people because I think he's still not that popular, but he was on the list of the New York Times 100 most influential novels, I think, or authors. I'll correct myself, I'll insert where he was, but that's how I found out about him. And the book, The Return, is basically his memoir on visiting Libya after the fall of the Gaddafi regime and looking for his father, who was abducted by the Gaddafi regime. And honestly, my knowledge of Libya in general and politics there is very limited. And I've learned so much just from reading this book. This book, actually, why did I give it 4 stars though? I think I should move it to 5 stars. I honestly think I should. I don't know why 4, because the more time passes, the more I'm like, I actually love that book. You know what? 5 stars. Here, it happened. I have to give it 5 stars because I think it meant too much to me. And maybe when I was just done, you know, when you're done with a book and you're like, yeah, that was this. But then time passes and you're like, I actually think about that book much more than I thought I would, and I go back to it in my head, and I actually, you know, I just created my Storygraph account and it was asking me for my favorite books to recommend me more books like this, and one of them I put was this one. Yeah, no, this is 5 stars. I'm gonna change it on Storygraph because I left Goodreads. Bye-bye, Jeff Bezos. Now I'm on Storygraph, so follow me there or become friends, whatever the term is. Okay, and now let's go back to 4-star reads. Unless I'll change my mind about any of these as well. But next is Hong Kong and Her, the Vegetarian. She got the Nobel Peace Prize? Did she? Right. No, she got Nobel Prize in Literature. I always mix those two up. Like, honestly, Of course, after that happened, I was like, okay, I need to read this book now, but it was on my TBR for a while as well. So this is also another Korean author. This year was a year of Korean authors for me. Like I read so many Korean books, more than ever in my life, and I honestly loved it. So basically the book is quite dark, I would say, and I maybe would check trigger warnings. Maybe if you had an ED or, you know, it's just very still hard for you to read about those things. Because in this book, the main character, Young Hya, she is married to this guy. They don't love each other. I don't think they even have sex. You know, it's just like loveless marriage. And then she becomes a vegetarian and everyone loses it. Everyone around her is just like, what, you're vegetarian? And it's just like quite a dark story. I don't want to say what more happens because I don't want to spoil it, but stuff that happens then, basically that's the premise, but then stuff that happens then makes it even darker and more heartbreaking, and yet I still recommend it to people. It was very touching. It was very difficult to read because of these issues that are being described in the novel, but I loved it. I'm looking forward to reading more Hong Kong in 2026. We'll definitely read her Human Acts, I think, and if I'm not mistaken, Greek Lessons. I might be wrong though. So yeah, looking forward to reading more of Hong Kong in 2026. Next book is by a Belgian author. So I was very excited to read a Belgian author, Jacqueline Harpman, and her I Who Have Never Known Men. So I actually proposed this book to my book club that I have with my former classmates. This is our way of keeping the bond and reading and discussing and seeing each other for intellectual conversations. And not a lot of people really liked it. I did like it. I think it was a great dystopian novel. I kind of expected it to end on a more explained ending. And yet, just like Memory Police, it just never explained anything. We were just left with all the answers in the end. So what happens here is that in this dystopian reality, 39 women live imprisoned in a cage, and one of them is this youngest girl who is the narrator, and she kind of explains to us how this society of imprisoned in a cage women lives. They're not allowed to touch each other. They have guards just watching them and not doing anything to them, just watching them. And that's kind of it. And then at some point, they are able to escape, let's say that. And what happens then, you might ask? I'm not gonna tell you. I need a tea break because my throat hurts from talking so much. Oh, and by the way, the Christmas tree, today we're getting rid of it. Bye-bye Christmas tree. This is the last time I had an opportunity to still film with my Christmas tree because I don't want this Christmas season officially to be over. And I feel like the moment we get rid of this Christmas tree is when it's over. And I really enjoyed this Christmas season, and it was so magical and lovely and so calm and peaceful that I'm just not ready to let it go. Okay, next book is the first book of 2025 that I finished, and this is The Idiot by Elif Batuman. So at the time I was doing my master's and I had my exams, and I got sick and like everything was happening. It was just a very difficult and dark time, and this book was the only positive in my life. And I honestly enjoyed reading it so much. I felt like I could relate to the main character, this academia experience, even though she's like younger than me and she's doing her studies at Oxford, I think, or Harvard. And it was just so fun. It was so interesting. There's a lot about Russian literature, which you know I love and I know quite well. So I just enjoyed it so much, and I already bought the second book, Either Or, but I haven't read it in 2025, even though I was gonna read it. So actually now I'm being reminded that I should add it to my TBR for the next few months and read it as soon as possible. But this book is basically half memoir, half fiction about the main character, Celine, studying at Harvard. And attending Russian classes. It's all very funny. It's all very witty and quirky, and I loved the characters, the way she describes them. I feel like I know these people. I feel like I've met these people. One of them is the Serbian friend of Celine that I forgot her name, but she was very funny. I think Svetlana was her name. And then another guy is this Hungarian guy that Celine falls in love with. And it's like very, I wouldn't say toxic relationship, but you know, we've all been there, like these relationships that just don't go anywhere. But it's so interesting. It's so exciting. I'm looking forward to reading either or. I'm looking that way because that's where I have the book and it's looking right at me. And I'm like, you and me, soon we're gonna reunite. Next author is also Turkish, so let's talk about this book as well. Elif Shafak, The 40 Rules of Love. This one has been on my TBR for a few years now, and I'm finally happy to say that I finished it. I took this book with me to Azerbaijan. I felt like it was quite on theme with the trip, and I read quite a bit on the plane and while being there, as much as I could, even though my days were quite busy. And then I finished the rest of it when we came back to Brussels. I gave it only 4 stars because basically the book is 2 different plots combined, where the first plot is today's character, Ella Rubinstein, who becomes an editor at this publishing house. She gets this manuscript that she needs to read and let the publishing house know her thoughts. And basically the manuscript is the second plot of the book, and that is about Rumi and Shams of Tabriz. And basically when I was doing some research, I found out that Rumi and Shams of Tabriz, there were some allegations, or some people suspect that this was more than just friendship. And that's what I kind of got from reading this book too, where it's like this friendship that people were against of, and the way she describes it, it's just like, were they friends or more than friends? You know what I mean? And also, why were people against Shams of Tabriz? Was it because he was all of those things that Elif Shafak describes him as, like this, you know, healer, he sees things? Or was it because of this questionable friendship, you know, between Rumi and Shams of Tabriz? The weird thing is that when Rumi lost Shams, he started writing those poems that we all know and love. They were for Shams of Tabriz. Tell me that was not just friendship, or tell me that was just friendship, because I don't believe that. I don't buy it. But I don't wanna say anything and then people coming for me. I'm just saying, this is what I got from it. But what I didn't like about this book is Ella Rubinstein's story, because she's this like housewife, her husband like is busy, and then she falls in love with this author of Shams of Tabriz story, and then he's the Scottish guy who converted to Sufism, and it's like explaining Sufism for the Western audience. I just don't think the book was written for me. I think she's a very talented author, and maybe I should try her other books, because it was very easy and interesting to read. It was just the quality itself that I am not so sure about, because it felt a bit Orientalist, even though it was written by a Turkish person. I really didn't expect that, but it felt like it was written for white people, for Western audience, and simplifying Sufism. And I'm not well educated on Sufism myself, but even with basic knowledge that I have, it felt like something a white person would write. So next is the author that I've read the most in 2025, because I've read 2 of her books, and that's more than any other author. Apparently, I wasn't reading the same author twice this year, which maybe is a good thing on its own. But the author that I've read 2 books from, because I was just that hooked, is Shirley Jackson. So her We Have Always Lived in the Castle was my very first Shirley Jackson. I absolutely loved it. I was reading it during the spooky season. I was having the time of my life reading this. It was so easy to read. It was so spooky. The thing is, I thought it would be actually a haunted house type of story, but it wasn't. And I kind of didn't understand that until I finished the book, and I'm like, oh wait, so there'll be no ghosts? So it's basically a story about these 2 sisters and an uncle who live in this family house where all the other family members died under very suspicious circumstances, and everyone in the town avoids their house, is afraid of their house, which is why I felt like this is a ghost story, right? Like, are these sisters even alive? I felt like they're dead already. I felt like they're just ghosts, and that's why people are afraid to go to the house, but they weren't ghosts. And this was my first Shirley Jackson, and I didn't know that she's really the queen of horror genre, that even without ghosts, she can make you feel uneasy. And so everyone is afraid of them, but throughout the book, we're kind of figuring out, so how did those family members die? Who killed them? And what are these sisters? And what about the story? You know, and it's just like, by just simply laying out the plot, I'm not doing it justice, and you just need to read this book to understand that Shirley Jackson is that girl. She was an amazing writer, and I definitely found my new favorite author in 2025. It is Shirley Jackson. I'm looking forward to reading more of her books, but I definitely think you need a special mood to go into her stories, novels, because like I said, it's all very like horror, uneasy, spooky, all of that. So you definitely should be in the special mood, or maybe wait for next Halloween season and then go for it. Another author that I fell in love with in 2025 is another American author, and that's John Steinbeck and his Of Mice and Men. This was my very first Steinbeck, and I'm so like in love with American classics. And I know American classics are more like modern classics, but I genuinely like, I think American literature is one of my faves, and the more I learn, the more authors I discover, the more certain I am that it is right up my alley. And this story is about these two friends, George and Lanny, who are looking for a job, and they find a job. It's like, you know, rural America, working class. And because it's so short, I decided to start with this one, but I really wanted to read this year East of Eden. And I'm still planning to read that in 2026, but in 2025, I went for the shorter book of Steinbeck, and I absolutely fell in love with his prose. And the book itself, why it only got 4 stars is because, you know, due to it being so short, I feel like I didn't have enough time to fall in love with characters or, you know, have an opinion, but the ending of it shocked me to my core. Okay, next is Dostoevsky and his White Nights. Yes, it's in Russian and it says White Nights. So I decided to read it because Anglo-American side of the internet talks about this book so much and so often that I was just like, what's up with that? And I think after reading Brothers Karamazov and Crime and Punishment, reading this is just not the same. Maybe if it's your first Dostoevsky, because this is definitely earlier Dostoevsky, and it doesn't even feel like Dostoevsky, but it's very funny, it's very beautiful, especially in original. But after reading Brothers Karamazov and Crime and Punishment, I had a very hard time kind of, you know, loving it. So basically it's this unrequited love story, how this guy falls in love with Nastinka, and Nastinka is in love with another guy, and it's all about white knights in St. Petersburg, because, you know, there's white knights there, and they're taking a walk in the city and share their feelings. And I get it, I get why it would be interesting for people. Just to me, it was kind of okay end. But like I said, I think if it would be my first Dostoevsky, maybe I would have a different opinion. But due to it being my third, actually interesting that it's my third Dostoevsky, because I feel like the way Brothers Karamazov and Crime and Punishment influenced my life and me and my reading choices, I feel like I've been reading Dostoevsky my whole life. So I definitely want to read Dostoevsky more in 2026. Luckily, I still have more of his books to read, and I'll update you guys on that as well. And we have 3 last books of 4-star reads. Let's try to get through them as soon as possible. And now that I actually mentioned classics, you know, American classics and Russian, Japanese classics, or Japanese literature in general, is right there on top. And I love Japanese literature. I reach out for Japanese authors, and this one was as brilliant as possible. So this is Yukio Mishima, The Sailor Who Fell from Grace with the Sea. I bought this one, actually beautiful, beautiful cover in Porto, in this bookstore called Livraria that's absolutely gorgeous. I'm gonna insert some photos because it's just so beautiful. And if you will ever be in Porto, must visit. Beautiful books there. And this one was on my list for a while, and when I saw it there, I was like, okay, we're getting it. And then I finally read it this year. Well, I got it this year, I read it this year, so not finally, but I mean, the book itself was on my TBR for a while, but now that I had a copy, I was like, okay, we're doing it. And I think it was like the first book I actually read right after being done with my thesis, so it was like celebratory moment. So Yukio Mishima is actually a very interesting character that I recommend reading his biography to kind of understand his importance. I think he was an actor, he was a writer. Okay, so he was born into a samurai family and he committed seppuku at the age of 45. Like, I'm sorry, but what? But basically the book is criticism of Japanese rule falling under the American capitalism and losing its historical, you know, importance or its history just in general. And the way it's done is actually quite fascinating, because without reading in-depth critique of the novel, maybe I wouldn't even get it, because the book itself focuses on this boy who is friends with other boys who are not really nice people. They're very cruel. They kill a cat, by the way, trigger warning. They also want to kill this man that his mom of the boy started seeing. He's a sailor, and they decide to get married with his mom, and it's just like this love story. But that wasn't the plan of the boy and his cruel friends. I only gave it 4 stars because it was not like my comfort read. It wasn't like the book that I was like, wow, what a book. It definitely was difficult to read due to violence and cruelty, but nonetheless, I highly recommend it, and I definitely will read more of Yukio Mishima. Next book is Seasonal Quartet by Alice Smith, and the first book in the Quartet series is Autumn. I honestly loved this book so much. I was kind of like going back and forth between giving it 5 stars and 4 stars, and I ended up going for 4 stars because I think it's still not like my most favorite read, but I enjoy her writing so much, and I'm currently reading her Winter, so the second book in the Seasonal Quartet series. And let me tell you, that one is like written in a way that it's just, her writing is so interesting. It's so unusual. I feel like the last time I had this feeling about someone's writing was when I was reading Bernardine Evaristo. The same way, like unusual writing style. That's why I do enjoy reading contemporary literature, because those authors that are bold enough to break conventional rules of writing, I love that. Very experimental, very interesting, unusual, and it takes a while to understand what the plot is about. I do understand that it might not be for everyone, and I think a lot of people just give up and only read this one and then don't go further, but I honestly fell in love with her writing. And so the plot of this book is, like, it took me a while to even understand, because like I said, I was having a hard time because this was my first time reading Alice Smith and I didn't know this is how she writes. But basically it's about 2 neighbors, Daniel, who is quite old man, and Elizabeth, who like is in her, well, I guess 30s, and they were neighbors. She was a kid, and she kind of falls in love with him, but of course he doesn't fall in love with her because he's, you know, he is an older man. And it's just a very interesting story of how she always loved this old man, and then he ends up being in a hospital, and she comes to visit him, and then things happen in between, but nothing really happens. So like, I understand why some people wouldn't be interested in this, but for me it worked. I think it's also very important that as a contemporary British author, she writes about contemporary British problems and the fact that nationalism is on the rise, and Brexit happened, and refugee crisis. Like, she has a way of talking about all those things, but in a very hidden way, where it's not like in your face and like screaming in your face, like this is what we're going to talk about and this is her stance, but you can definitely get that between the lines and read between the lines what the book is actually about, which I absolutely loved. The next book and the last one, and I think the one that I actually should have put under 3 stars, not 4 stars, but it is what it is and we'll just go with it. And this is Toshikazu Kawaguchi, Before Your Memory Fades. I think this is the 3rd book in Before the Coffee Gets Cold series. I try to read these once a year, so I think it's already like 6 books out. And I know, like I said, that Hyunam Dong bookshop, like not for me, and weirdly this one works for me, but I think it's because of the time traveling. So if you don't know, this Japanese series is about this coffee shop in Japan where people come and they can go back in time and visit their loved ones or whoever they want. And I think that's what makes it so interesting and so beautiful to me, because it's a lot about the loss and grief and reliving happy moments and having second chances to say something or not to say anything. And that's the beauty of it. And I know it's a silly, book, and to give it 4 stars and like to put it together with Dostoevsky, but it still worked for me. And like I said, I do need these books from time to time, just not think about too many things and just to still continue reading while maybe I'm dealing with something else in my life, And so these books, comfort reads, we need them, we love them. I think just you need to find the one that works for you. But otherwise, this one I truly loved. Okay, I think I really underestimated how long it will take me to film this, because I've been filming for I think like over an hour now, and we are only now getting to 5-star reads. But I'm gonna be as quick as possible, I promise. Hold on. Okay, since I already kind of moved one book into the 5-star read, this is book number 2, and that is James Baldwin and Giovanni's Room. I love this book. I read it for a book club and I'm so glad I did, because this book was on my TBR for years. I think in one of my books I want to read next year, like videos, I was talking about it. I was talking about reading James Baldwin. He was on my TBR for a while, and then if it wasn't for that book club, I would still probably not read it. So here's your sign to read James Baldwin if you haven't yet. So this is a story about a young American moving to Paris, and he moves there with his fiance, while his fiance is like I think in Spain or somewhere on vacation. His fiance is a woman. He meets this Giovanni, this young man, and they fall in love. And it's such a beautiful gay love story. And I need to emphasize that this is a gay love story because for its time, and even now, like we don't have enough stories talking about gay experiences and gay love stories and about this struggle of a person to accept who they are. And I feel like this is exactly what this book is about. It's how you need to be brave enough to love whom you love and to be able to say it out loud, and even to be honest with yourself, and how letting that love go can be self-destructive and can destruct so many others as well. And just to imagine, like, if a person would accept that this is who I am and this is whom I love, like how much better it would have ended. But that's the reality for so many gay people still, even today, and this is a sad reality. But this book is so beautifully written, is so phenomenal that it will forever be my top favorite. Another love story that I've read this year, that usually I am not into love stories. I don't really care about romance, but this one was all over social media because of its iconic cover. So I had to read it. So this one is Sabahattin Ali and his Madonna in a fur coat, and I I just fell in love with this book. I will honestly gift it to everyone and anyone because I think it's such a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful story. I actually haven't heard of Sabahattin Ali. I don't even know that many people from Turkish literature, let's say. And this year I ended up reading 3 Turkish authors. One Turkish American and one I think Turkish British, but one Turkish, but still Turkish literature apparently was prevalent this year for me. So this is a love story about this Turkish student moving to Germany after the World War I and to Berlin and falling in love with this woman and how their love story goes on. It's a very sad book. I will definitely be rereading it. I think it's like top of the best books I've read in my life, and it's really difficult to give you a plot without spoiling because I think the beauty of it is that I had no idea what's gonna happen. I didn't expect any ending. I really appreciated that we got to meet the character when he was older and from the eyes of another person, and then that person together with us discovering this love story and this old man and all of that beauty that he kept within himself and all of that sadness. The best, honestly, the best book of the year. Okay, one of the best because I read so many beautiful books this year, but this one will forever be in my heart. And next is a Russian author, and that's Anton Pavlovich Chekhov and his The Seagull. So you probably have heard a lot about this play, you probably have seen it, but I have never read it, I have never seen it, and so this was my first time because I was like, why are people always talking about it? I need to know, why are people always talking about it? And so I finally read it and I realized the ending is the reason you need to read it. I honestly didn't expect it. I didn't see it coming, but it was so wonderful. I'm honestly a big fan of Chekhov, and I'm so glad that there's still so much more I haven't read from him, and there's still so much more I can read in the future and still have more comfort reads. He is that author that will always provide top-notch literature. Okay, he passed away, but he still provides, he still gives. Every time I discover his new play, his new story, I love the way he was writing, and I think it's like an easy read where the beauty and the importance of his place and short stories, because I don't think he wrote any novels, but the beauty is in its simplicity and in the characters and character development. Next is sort of a self-help book, I think, but I cried, I loved it, I couldn't stop reading it. So this is Tuesdays with Morrie by Mitch Albom. I don't care if people think this is like lowbrow to like put it here. This is a story about a person who had this disease taking their life and his student coming back to have these talks with him. What do you mean? What do you mean? It's so beautiful, it's so sad, but it's also life, you know, and it was so wonderful to get life wisdom from this dying person, Morrie. And I think the idea of this book is so simple and yet so brilliant. And, you know, to compare with the beginning of this video, I want to die, but I want to eat tteokbokki. The same kind of premise of having conversation of two people recorded and like put on the piece of paper, and yet what a big difference, you know. And I love this book. I gave it 5 stars. I asked my husband to read it and he read it, and he personally wasn't touched by it as much. For me, one of the best novels, and I mean, it's not a novel, just one of the best stories, and definitely my top in 2025. Next is another American author, and that is Shirley Jackson, The Haunting of Hill House. So like I told you, I read 2 books by Shirley Jackson this year, because after I was done with We Have Always Lived in This Castle, I was like, okay, but I still need my spooky read, because I thought that one was about ghosts. I thought she only wrote about ghosts, but then I realized she's more complex than that. But this one is about ghosts, but not really, because it's much more. Like I said, I gave it 5 stars because it kept me on my toes, and I was just like, always like, what's gonna happen next? What's gonna happen next? I watched Netflix production based on this novel, so I thought it's gonna be the same, and to my surprise it was completely different. It was just inspired by this book, but Netflix production was nothing close, well, maybe some parts, but nothing close to this novel. So absolutely adored it. It's about this professor going to the Hill House, and he takes with him Theodora, yes, I'm looking because I don't remember their names, Luke, who is an heir to the house. So Theodora is this just person, and the main character, kind of, Eleanor. And we are mostly seeing things, well, yeah, we've seen things from Eleanor's perspective, and she, I dare to say, is the main character. And weird things are happening in this house, and they know that this is happening, you know, and that's why they are coming to this house. And yet, when we are discovering all that is happening there, that's the interesting part. I didn't expect the ending. It kept me on my toes, like I said, and beautiful read, and it inspired me to read more of Shirley Jackson this year, which you will definitely be seeing in my next videos. Okay, so next two books will be non-fictions that I used for my thesis, and I actually finished because I used a lot more books, but I was reading them partially and like was looking for certain information to back up what I was trying to say. But these two I actually finished and I loved. So first one is Edward Said and his Covering Islam. Brilliant, brilliant. I think whatever it is by Edward Said, I will read it. I will devour it. I will cherish it. This is my second Said. Orientalism changed my life. This one, after Orientalism, is just much easier read, first of all, but also it explains American media and the Orientalist portrayal of the Middle East. And here we're specifically focusing on the Iranian hostage story that happened, I think, in the 70s. And how good old Orientalism helped to cover Islam and to explain everything as black and white, and Muslims are terrorists and the regime is a terror regime and stuff like that. So brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. I will recommend it to everyone. The same way I recommend Orientalism, it will forever be my top favorite. And next book is Except for Palestine, The Limits of Progressive Politics by Mark Lemon Hill and Mitchell Plitnick. It's a very short read, but very important. As you can see, I was highlighting quite a lot. You can see red, green passages, and pink as well. This book was very helpful because my whole thesis was pretty much about American left not being as progressive when it comes to the question of Palestine and the coverage of Palestine. And this book just highlighted everything in a very easy way. So if you were looking for information specifically about the US media and the US left and its relation to Israel and lack of coverage, lack of sympathy for Palestinians, this is the book for you. And the last three books, we're so close to the end. This one was actually the last book of 2025. This is a collection of short stories by Kazakh women writers called Amanat. Amanat in Kazakh is like basically something that is given from your ancestors to you. And it's a beautiful word. I don't even know what is the right translation, but that's basically what it entails. And this was a present from my friend as well, and I waited to read this book when the time is right, and I feel like the time has finally come because I was feeling very homesick before the holidays because I couldn't leave the country, and I reached for this book for comfort, and it delivered. It reminded me home, it reminded me my people, our mentality, the good and the bad. It reminded me life back home, and it also inspired me for the story that I'm currently writing for one of my submissions. So it was so beautiful and so wonderful, and I just want to recommend it to people. If you want to learn more about Kazakhstan and you have probably never read anything from Kazakhstan, this could be a very good beginning. And even I, someone from Kazakhstan, never even heard of these authors, and it's such a shame that we don't know more about Kazakh writers, Kazakh literature, Kazakh authors. So this was a beautiful, beautiful read. The next is a very painful read, and I read it I think in January, so like a year ago. And this is Minor Detail by Adania Shibli, who is a Palestinian author, and this book is about Palestinian life under occupation. And it consists of two stories. First one happening in the summer of 1949, where Israeli soldiers kidnapped this girl. Trigger warning, the R word happens. I don't want to say the word, but you can understand. They do this act, they kill this young Palestinian woman and they bury her in the sand. And then the second story starts where this young woman in Ramallah, years later, like our time, kind of tells us how her life under occupation looks like and takes us on this journey to investigate more about this story. By the way, the story about the young girl actually did happen, and so this was a very beautiful way of combining prose and reality, historical events, and fiction that, I mean, in this case, honestly, it's not fiction. It's not fiction. What happens to the narrator in the second part of the book happens to so many Palestinians, and I cannot even call it fiction because this is just the reality. And it's a very beautiful book, very important read. It's very short, so it's not going to take too much of your time. Please read this book because it's very powerful. And now, to end it on a more positive note, the last book is the one that I think I loved the most this year. Although now, after like looking at all the 5-star books, I'm like, no, it was a very good year. I had a lot of beautiful reads that became my favorites, not just for this year, but for like my life, you know. But this one, I don't know, it did something special. And this is Pachinko by Min Jin Lee. It's a 500-page long book that I have read in 1 month, which never happens because I'm a slow reader and I prefer my short books because I can get through them quicker. But I have read it for my book club with my friend, 2-people book club, where we just wanted to read something together and then discuss. And I knew our book club was coming up, so I had to finish it. But it was so easy to get lost in this book because of how beautiful it's written, how interesting the plot is. So basically, this is a family saga where we're following 4 generations of one family and how they migrate from Korea under Japanese occupation to Japan, and then World War II is happening, and as you know and remember, Japan was on the wrong side of history. Then Americans bombed them, and how all of that like affects this family and their story, and how beautifully it was done, and how inspiring it was for me to read this. Inspiring because I'm trying to write a historical fiction and I'm gathering ways of how do other authors create these worlds and at the same time talk about historical facts, because that's what I'm interested in. So for that reason, I think this was my most favorite book of 2025, which was so difficult to just say this was the most favorite because so many good books were read by me this year and I loved them, and I had a really good reading year. But I have already said enough, and it's already getting darker and darker outside, and I need to edit this now and put it out there. And I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know if you've read any of these books. I will be filming now what I plan to read in 2026. So if you want to see that one, make sure to subscribe. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a big thumbs up. And thank you so much for watching. I hope to see you again very soon, and have a good day. Bye.